I'm a huge proponent of stay in your lane if you don't know. And if you don't know, ask.
Hello, we are so excited to have Coach Danielle Hurt here together with us again. So thanks so much for coming back, Coach D. And we're going to kind of focus a little more this time on kind of the professional and running coach relationship this time. So we wanted to just dive in a little bit deeper. Coach D is over at Formula Running Center here in Arlington, and then she also does coaching on her own. All right, so we'll dive right in. What are some of the advantages to having a collaborative team that includes a running coach? And I know you've got some experience with this, so.
Yeah, absolutely. So the advantage of having not only a medical team or, a physical therapist, your OBG, all of those, but also employing either a personal trainer that has experience with running or a specified running coach, we all have our own expertise, right? We all have our own lanes, and I'm a huge proponent of stay in your lane if you don't know, and if you don't know, ask. But a lot of times when you're working with a medical professional, they're used to seeing very similar things over and over. And I don't want to say not giving out this different advice to different people, but they're always looking at it through that medical lens, right? If they're not an active runner themselves, it may not be something they think about. So it's nice to kind of have everybody coming together to talk about what are the common goals for this client, for this athlete. What is it they're looking to achieve? And it's nice to have a space where you can collaborate on ideas and maybe think a way that you haven't thought before. I love working with physical therapists and working with medical practitioners just because that's the side of the business. I look from business, but that side of health, I don't really know and understand, right? I'm not as well versed in that. But if you tell me, hey, they're really weakened in these 3 muscles, bam, I know exactly where to run and exactly what to give them. That maybe that doctor doesn't have the background in and how to exercise and use those. They just go, these aren't right. What can we do to fix them? So it's a nice kind of passing the baton. So if you're looking at like a 4x4 relay, right? You kind of just pass it off and it's like, hey, I've cleared them to do this, but I don't know how to get them to do that. Now it's your turn. Take them to the next level. If they experience any pain, discomfort, etc., let's take a step back and have another conversation. So it's just a really nice sharing of ideas, but also utilizing each other's expertise in the fields.
Yeah, I totally am agreeing with that. Like the biggest gaps I will always see, first of all, that first, like speaking postpartum, is that, 6 weeks, you're cleared to go run. I'm like, no, you know better now. But even if you're like, all right, I got to 12 weeks, go run. It's like, no, not that either. But especially in my field, there's so many, especially now, there's so many PTs that have gone into pelvic and postpartum that don't necessarily have orthopedic background. They went straight into pelvic PT, and this is like their jam. Whereas there's others of us who, did sports and orthopedics first, and then they got into it. But so we kind of have some context, but at the same time, there's barely any PTs that could be considered running coaches, could have, any sort of strength and conditioning background. It's them kind of just pulling from their own experience. So that's where I think there's such an important role to bring in somebody like that's your jam, that's your bread and butter. You may kind of be able to give them a place to start, or at least understand what you want them to do, but really kind of letting that expert run with it.
Yeah, pun intended, right? Just kind of run with it. But it's a great point, because you also have, athletes or clients that, for example, I have one athlete now she's run, I think 12 or 13 marathons, and she's now postpartum with her second, and it's a totally different experience from her first. So we can't even say copy paste and I'll just do the thing you did last time. There's different things we're doing now, and it's getting over, a lot of it also is the mental aspect of it, is leave your ego at the door. And running coaches, we are famous for saying every run has a purpose, because you can tell someone, hey, just go out and run. You're cleared to run. Well, what does that mean? Before I was pregnant, I was running 5 miles. So I just do 5 miles? No, we got to build back up. So there is, looking back at your your progressive training and saying, okay, where were you? Where are you now? And then how long we'll build a program to get you back to that based on how you are succeeding with the different PT exercises that you have, making sure your pelvic floor is fully healed, making sure you know what to feel when you're running or should not be feeling. So all of those steps, kind of are a great collaborative effort between the teams.
Yeah. And you brought up a great point too, that especially with postpartum, like my return to run after my second was completely different than after my first, I not only had a couple other pregnancies under my belt, but like I wasn't able to be active because you've got small humans that you have to take care of. And so you just don't have that space. But in your head, you're like, oh, I can totally jump back. No.
Nope. Nope. We spend time building up, and it's just, I hate to say it's like, yeah, okay, you are still a runner, but you're not the runner you once were. You're going to become a new runner. And that's sometimes really scary to think about. It's like,
hard.
I'm going to wait, but she was fast. Yeah, but she'll be fast too, but it'll just be a different way to get there. And reminding clients that, you want to run the rest of your life, right? Because I can easily get you to run a marathon in 3 weeks, in 3 months, whatever, but you're going to have permanent damage and potentially an injury to your pelvic floor. And then you're going to be off running for a long time.
Yeah.
So let's look at this as, and then the other flip side is working with clients and reminding them, your children are only young ones. Let's not just you run away and go on your long run because that's what you think you need to do. Right? We can build back up to that and we can chase those dreams. And it's even more fun. Since I've worked with a lot of postpartum moms now, really just bringing into that vision of like, don't you want have your kids at your finish line? And they're like, oh my gosh, I haven't even, I'm like, yeah, like let's think about that and bring them as part of it. Because if you're all cohesively together involved in this effort, it's not like mommy's leaving me for a run. They have a purpose and intention, and then it kind of relieves some of that mommy guilt too. So if you find I think you're going to ask this question later, but like finding a good running team or a good team to be around, we talk about those pieces, not just about like run for 1 minute, walk for 4, or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's that whole big picture. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So what is that team look like at its best? Like best case scenario, like what does that look like?
I would say best case scenario is you have professionals coming together that, one, respect and understand where they're experts, but where they also want to maybe learn new things and are willing to kind of play in that space, but also from similar athletic, maybe not backgrounds, but understanding. Yep. There are a lot that come to me that are pelvic floor PTs, that are just PTs in general. And I can't tell how many times I've heard a doctor be like, okay, no, you can't do squats anymore. And I'm like, how are they going to sit down? What do you mean don't do squats?
On the toilet this morning, right?
Exactly. I'm like, we're not going to jive. We're not going to see eye to eye. Or don't do a deadlift. And I'm like, what do you mean don't do a deadlift? How's she going to pick up her 2-year-old?
Toys off the floor. You just
exactly. So like it's just these like very broad statements, and I'm like, that's not how this works. So finding professionals and teams that have a same either vision of where you could go, or just maybe even, it's great if they all have the same background. If you all are runners, if you all are strength training, if you're involved in endurance sports, even the better. But at least if you have the same mindset, that to me, I think is what creates the best team for the client.
Yeah. I think over the years, having been in the DC area for this long, like I was just talking to somebody the other day that we knew the same people. And she's like, how do you think that happens? I'm like, I think you get in these circles and these orbits, and they draw to each other. You're going to eventually bump into each other, and it just makes this beautiful little bubble. Like I think when I connected with you, I didn't realize that you went to South Arlington Fitness and Nutrition and New Meredith and all that. And I'm like, oh, okay, we're good now.
We're all good. All of those circles combined.
And also, not for nothing, when you have a running coach that also does CrossFit, like you're good in my book. So
I will tell you, I was not to we're at CrossFit again, but I was so against CrossFit.
Oh yeah,
5 years ago.
Yep.
Totally. I think we talked about this in our last call. Totally against it. And then I like tiptoed in because a friend was like, will you come? And I'm like, yeah, of course I'll come. Like, yeah, I'm always, let's try it. Let's so I can actually say I hate it. And here I was like this morning, like PRing like a chest press. Like, it's just like, what am I doing?
Yeah. I mean, I think when you feel that in your running too, both of us
100%.
First, you hear it and you're like, oh, okay, sure. And then you do it. And then you're like, oh crap, they were right. Now I have to do this.
Yep. I will tell all of my runners, strong runners are the ones that don't get injured. If you're a strong runner, and that doesn't mean you can go out and run 16 miles, that means you can pick up a barbell, you can do a deadlift properly, you know how to engage your core, just all those basic fundamentals. Should you be doing crazy metcons? No, but can you lift efficiently? Yeah. You're going to be a stronger runner.
No, that's a big conversation I'm having right now with just trying to introduce it sooner, especially even with new moms that, they may not be finished having kids. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to spell this out, how this is going to look. you're going to want to return back to running. Strength is going to be a role here, but ultimately I want you to start to think about loading up, because as soon as you're done having kids, next step is perimenopause, yay, and bone health. And the best way to load is get a barbell on your back and put some load down through your hips and your spine. And so I figure if I start introducing those words early, then they've got at least 4 or 5 years to mull it over. And then by the time we get to the point we need to do it,
it makes sense to them. Then they're like, oh yeah. I mean, very same conversations, after or as someone's, not maybe in the thick of the pregnancy, but was they're thinking about getting pregnant. I'm like, we probably want to build up the ability for you to pick up load, because how heavy is a child carrier? Let me tell you, I'm in shape. I can't even pick up the car seats at the time. Trying to get a stroller out.
No,
so all these things. But they always tell you, and this is going back to like what makes best for a collaborative team is if you have a doctor who's saying don't deadlift, I'm like, how are you picking up the carrier? Don't carry heavy things. Well, you have a 2-year-old on your one side and a carrier on the other. Okay, so why aren't we doing farmers carries? So there's things like that that I also incorporate, not just for running health, but in general, just making mom more fit. I personally look back at my own mother, and she worked out my entire life. My mom is now 61 years old and does CrossFit and stumbled into it. I have no idea how she got started. I did not tell her to do it. But she loves it. She has no idea what the names of the lifts are. No idea. But she's cares. She thinks it's great. But she's 61 years old and keeping up with the 30-something-year-olds in her class. So
that's the way to do it. Totally. All right. Last question. What should a professional or a client look for in a running coach? Like, let's say I have no idea where to start. Like, where do I look?
So if you find somebody, ask questions. I mean, I'm sure you get this all the time, is talk to your provider, ask them questions to make sure that they understand and they have experience. Right now, there's not a ton of certifications for runners, specifically like run coaches, to get postpartum training. Yes, you can do postpartum group exercise and you can get training certificates, and there's a lot of education. But I find just working with the client in general and having that experience is going to be your best foundation. Even I wouldn't say that the person had to have gone through it themselves. Me personally, I'm single, no children. Most of my clients are like, wait, the way you talk about it, it's like you have kids. I'm like, no, I have wonderful nieces and I think it's wonderful. But I learn a lot, and just, even if you're not pregnant, if you haven't gone through it, I may not fully understand, but at least I can relate to some degree in terms of the way the muscle should feel and what you're maybe not totally what you're going through. So obviously the next step up from somebody like myself who's maybe hasn't gone through it is someone who has gone through it and lived the highs and lows. But I wouldn't say that that's necessarily an end all be all. The other thing,
I was going to say with that one, I almost see the opposite. Like, I see so many, and you can say this about CrossFit too. I see so many people that don't have a background in postpartum, or like don't have a background in, some of these things, but they are a runner, or they do CrossFit, and then they have a baby, and now they want to take their experience and extrapolate it back and set the rules up that way, but they don't actually have the foundation.
Right. Yep.
And you're like, but I did it and you can do it too. Or my personal favorite is they have a PhD after their name. So people just assume that it's for this, and it's actually for like something completely different. They still use the PhD. And I'm like, yes, you earned it. I get it. I'm all Jill Biden. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But like, we need to be a little clearer on our marketing that your PhD has nothing to do with this.
With this and what you're getting. Exactly. No, and I think that's a great point too, is you can't relate. And that's a great thing to look for either in a provider or in a coach. This goes for not just running, but personal training. Someone who's not just taking their experience and saying, well, this is how it's going to be for you. Because everybody is different. Everybody has a different experience. Everyone's going to feel something. So you want to make sure that, okay, yes, you've gone through it. So maybe you can relate to me more. But at the same time, being cautious to make sure that they're not biased to their own experience and using that to formulate how they move forward. I would say the best professionals, the best trainers that I've seen out there are ones that have, and we were talking about this before, is a network, right? Yeah. Of knowing people so you can draw on that experience. Because like I said in the beginning, I wish we could know it all, right? Where we all stay in our own lanes, we're all experts in some degree, but it's not possible. You're going to get a question. I always, a lot of my clients probably get frustrated, but they ask me something. They're like, well, can I do this? I'm like, well, it depends. Well, can I do this?
That's my favorite. That's when I know that I found my people, because I'm like, if you answer that, we're going to get along just fine.
Yeah, because it's always,
we'll have to see.
it depends. Yeah, we'll have to see. And it's the same with nutrition and return to running. Like all the time I'll have athletes ask me, well, hey, if I do this, can I do this weekend? And I'm like, well, it depends. What are you going to do this day, this day, this day? And how did this run go? There's just so many factors that come into it. And there's so much outside of just like the physical piece of it. It's like, okay, well, how was work? How was your nutrition? How was sleep? How much screen time did you have? You know, just how burnt, are you burnt out? Do you like the workout? So there's so many pieces and components to it. So I really think just having professionals in your circle that have that approach are going to set you up for the best success.
Yeah, definitely. And just make it realistic and actionable. There's, especially right now, I feel like there's so many things that moms are trying to pull together. And sometimes they just want to show up and be told what to do and know that they're going to be okay and taken care of.
Yes. Yep. And then sometimes it's, you know, we always, and I led a habits group. So Formula Running Center, we did an awesome formula reboot, which was all about building habits. We spent 4 weeks talking about how to take what we have, how to get what we want, and just what do we do along the way. And the one thing we kept harping back on was 1%, the 1% rule. We always get so transfixed on wanting to start here and be way over here, but we forget about this journey in between. Yeah. And just chopping it up into little. What's that?
You read Atomic Habits, haven't you?
Yes. And 7 Habits Smiling But the People. Yes. All of those. Yes.
I love that book. I love it.
It's a great book. I highly recommend it. It's an easy read, but it's a hard implement. It is something that you have to be conscientious of. But yeah, enjoy the journey. Like I remind moms, I remind athletes, like, unless you're doing something I don't know, we don't get paid to do this. This running, working out, this is for you. That's your time. And be what you want it to be. And you don't have to get there tomorrow. You didn't get to where you are today in a week, right?
We forget that though. That's such a great point.
So just remember and enjoy the journey. It's going to go backward. It's going to go forwards. You're going to have highs and lows. But speaking of, Atomic Habits, is make your environment, your social network, make that your normal. So if you want to be someone who works out 4 times a week, you want to be a runner who is thinking about being a runner, at least getting out twice a week, hang out with people that do that. And that becomes the norm. If you hang out with people that are couch potatoes, be a couch potato. And that's fine if that's what you want. So
exactly. Awesome. Well, you can find Coach D here at Run with Coach D on Instagram. And then also she's at the Formula Running Center here in Arlington. So thank you so much. We always have such fun.
Yes, you're so much fun to chat with, Carrie. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.